changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark with your daily dose of Chicken Soup for the Soul inspiration to make you simply happy. So it's the new year, and I want to talk about something that I hear a lot from men and women, young and old. I hear them saying, I need to get some new friends. We actually made a whole book about friendship a few years ago after all of us Chicken Soup for the Soul editors found ourselves talking about this and how we were all kind of weeding out our friends who didn't really work for us anymore and how we all wanted to make some new friends. So we put together a book called Chicken Soup for the Soul, Just as Girls. And one of the topics we explored was how one would go about finding those new friends. One of our regular writers, Chanel Eliason, shared a story in which she told us how she did it. Chanel was a young mother, and although she was very busy with her sons, she still needed a new friend, especially because 5 of her 7 closest friends had moved in the past year. So Chanel met a woman named Michelle at church one day. Michelle's husband had been in the Navy, and even now, with a civilian job, he was still getting transferred all over. So Michelle was great at making new friends wherever she went. And, making new friends is a bit like dating. Sometimes we want to evaluate someone for a while before we go in for the ask. But Michelle, who had moved a lot and knew how to do this, jumped right in. And first time she met Chanel, asked Chanel if she wanted to have lunch together that very day. Chanel was surprised but happy, and she and her 3 sons went over to Michelle's house that day. And while the boys played with Michelle's 4 children, the 2 moms got to know each other, and they had a great time. The next day, at Bible school, Michelle was waiting by the door. I need to get groceries tonight, she said to Chanel. Do you want to come? Well, Chanel had never gone grocery shopping with a friend before, but she thought, why not? So she said yes. And then Michelle mentioned that another friend would be coming as well, and she would pick up Chanel. When Michelle picked her up that evening, Chanel was quite surprised to meet the other friend. She was much younger than them, and she was single. But they had a wonderful time shopping together, and Chanel started to realize that you don't have to make friends only with people who are just like you. And that was life with Michelle. She was different from anyone Chanel had ever met. She had a lot of friends, and they were all types, older, younger, single, married, with no children, with half a dozen children. Chanel was in awe of Michelle. She had filled a void in her life, and Chanel learned something from watching the way that Michelle gathered up friends from all over and put them together, which is why Chanel called her story Wild Bouquet of Friends. Then, unfortunately, Michelle told Chanel that her husband was being transferred yet again. Chanel was going to lose yet another friend. She helped Michelle pack up all her belongings, and then on moving day, she stood in her driveway and waved until that white truck disappeared. Chanel was lonely again, but then a few days later, she was outside with her kids at a playground, and she saw another mother, someone she hadn't seen before. She was much younger than Chanel, but now Chanel knew what to do. She channeled her friend Michelle, and she walked up to that young woman and said hello, and that young mother became one of Chanel's closest friends. And then Chanel continued to channel Michelle, and she made friends with women of all ages, with all types of lives, and she says she owes it all to her teacher, Michelle. I'm Amy Newmark. Thanks for listening today. Tomorrow we're going in a different direction with a story about a family that found an inner strength to face up to a challenge that most of us wouldn't believe we could live through. If you want to read more tips about friendship from Chicken Soup for the Soul, Just as Girls, please go to our website, chickensoup.com.